Okay, we're going to review lesson 1.5, which is adding integers, and take a look at the algorithm for how we can do this. First thing we're going to do is watch a video.
Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader.
Superman and Lex Luthor.
Katie Heron and the Plastics.
Things get interesting when we add positive and negative numbers together. Does that last example make sense?
Oh, it will.
Last episode, we talked about integers, positive whole numbers, and their opposites.
This week, we're going to see what happens when we add positive and negative integers together.
The first thing you need to know is that every single number has an evil twin or supervillain. That's called its opposite. If you're into comics or sci-fi, this will make total sense.
Opposites are the same distance from zero, but just on the opposite side of the number line. For example, say we have positive 5, which is in the positive direction from 0. There is a negative 5 lurking the negative side of 0, trying to plan its demise.
When these two numbers are added together, like the light side and the dark side of the force, they create 0.
So, remember last episode when I said I owed my friend Shauna $50 because I bought this really cute denim jacket that I'm obsessed with? So Shauna, here's your money. Negative $50 plus $50 equals 0. So, I guess we're good now. Another example of opposite pairs.
But what if there's some disturbance within the force? Say you start with positive 4 and add negative 4. That makes 0. But what if negative 70 comes along? Then, like Anakin, in the clutches of Emperor Palpatine,
the number will definitely go to the negative side.
but then Luke Skywalker comes and he's like, positive 1,000. That's when the answer goes back on the positive side of the number line. And the battle between good and evil, the sign with the greatest force, triumphs.
We saw good and evil at play. The positive and negative forces play a role in our daily lives as well, like high school, where there are positive people.
So much fun, guys. Who are your friends?
And then there are...
Of course, all the negatives hang out together. How do we even begin to add a negative?
Check it out. It's our burning book. We put all the rules of adding negative numbers and put them in there. Try one.
Adding a negative number moves you in the negative direction.
That's negative. Put that in there.
Positive 1 plus negative 2 is negative 1. And what happens if we add negative numbers together?
With one snap, I can totally unenroll.
Negative 1 plus negative 1 plus negative 1 is negative 3.
Totally not going to say this part because you're probably in school, but in reality, I'm so much better than that.
Adding negative numbers together gets really negative.
Entering the world of adding negativity has a lot of rules.
When we add positive numbers, we move to the right, or in the positive direction on the number line. For example, when we add 4 and 3, we find 4 on the number line, and then we move to the right 3 spaces to get 7. But if we were adding a negative number, we move to the left, or in the negative direction on the number line. For instance, let's say we have 4 plus negative 3. We find 4, then we move in the negative direction 3 places to 1.
So when we're adding positive numbers, we go to the right, and when we're adding negative numbers, we go to the left. Well, what happens if I break the rules?
And you can't sit with us at lunch. And on Wednesdays, we wear pink. For instance, if we use the same numbers 4 and negative 3 but switch them around, you do it the same way. First, we find negative 3 on the number line, and because we're adding a positive 4, we go 4 in the positive direction to get 1. It's like the rules of math. You might have noticed something. Negative 3 plus 4 equals 1, and 4 plus negative 3 also equals 1. Addition is always commutative. Whether you're adding positive or negative numbers, if you swap them around, you get the same answer. That is so fetch. Stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
One more thing to watch out for. Parentheses act as a force field, so we don't confuse the number sign with the operation. Much better.
That's it for this week. If you want to play around with adding positive and negative numbers, stick around for the quiz. Awesome!
Oh yeah, and next week, we'll see how the double negative can combat all the negativity out there.
Well, I don't not like him.
Chica, that means you like him.
See you next time.
Okay. Okay, we are also going to take a look at one more video, and it'll help us kind of summarize the rules that we just heard about in the Math Club video.
Is there a method for finding the sum of integers with opposite signs without using a number line? In this lesson, you will learn to add integers with opposite signs by using an algorithm. Let's review. The absolute value of a number is its distance from 0 on a number line. For example, positive 3 is 3 units away from 0. Its absolute value is 3. Negative 3 is also 3 units away from 0, but in the opposite direction. Its absolute value is also 3. When we add two numbers with the same sign, we move in the same direction on the number line. For example, 7 plus 5. The addends are both positive, so we move to the right 7 units and then 5 units for an answer of 12. In negative 7 plus negative 5, both addends are negative, so we move to the left 7 units and then 5 units for an answer of negative 12. When we add two numbers with opposite signs, we move in opposite directions on the number line. In the problem negative 7 plus 5, we move 7 units to the left and then 5 units to the right for an answer of negative 2. A mistake that many students make when they don't use a number line is to think that when we add numbers with opposite signs, the sum will have the same sign as the first number. However, this is not necessarily the case. When we add 2 plus negative 1, we see that the answer is indeed a positive number. However, when we add 2 plus negative 3, the answer is negative. So how can we find the sum without using a number line? First, let's see if we can see a pattern. Can you find a pattern when adding integers with opposite signs? You may have noticed that arranging the absolute values of the addends makes a true subtraction equation. But how do we know if the answer to the addition equation should be positive or negative? A common algorithm is to subtract the absolute values of both numbers. The answer will have the same sign as the number with the larger absolute value. Let's look at 6 plus negative 10. The absolute value of negative 10 is 10, and the absolute value of 6 is 6. 10 minus 6 is 4. Since negative 10 has a larger absolute value, the answer will be negative. Let's look at another example. Negative 8 plus 20. The absolute value of negative 8 is 8, and the absolute value of 20 is 20. 20 minus 8 is 12. Since 20 has the larger absolute value, the answer will be positive. Will this algorithm work for larger integers as well? Let's try two larger numbers like 75 and negative 100. The absolute value of negative 100 is 100. The absolute value of 75 is 75. 100 minus 75 is 25. Since negative 100 has the larger absolute value, the answer will be negative. We can check this answer on a number line. We move 75 units in the positive direction, and then 100 units in the negative direction. Negative 25 is indeed the answer. In this lesson, you have learned to add numbers with opposite signs by using an algorithm.
So for this next slide, let's go ahead and write this down. I know it's a lot of words, but it's kind of that summarizing that algorithm from the last video. If you want to write this at the bottom too, you can. When you have two positives, this is going to be interesting. A positive plus a positive equals a positive. A negative plus a negative will equal a negative. But then when you get down here to the unlike signs, you can see that when you add integers with different signs, you find their difference. We're actually subtracting the numbers, and it's always going to be subtract the larger absolute or the smaller absolute value from the larger absolute value. So when we look at -2 and +3, we want to take 2 from 3, which is 1. Then which one of those original numbers had the higher absolute value? That's the sign. If you refer back to the math club video, think of those positive and negative forces, right? It could be a lightsaber. We had a -2 lightsaber and a +3, and the positive lightsaber won because it has a higher value. Okay, we're going to do just one more example. What's going to happen when we have to do sums of more than just two numbers? I'm going to show you kind of a trick or a way to do this in a way that you can solve it. I like to call it the grouping forces method. So what we want to do is look at our problem. In A, we have -27 plus 56 plus -85. So I see two negative numbers here, and I know that if I went left to right, I would have a negative and a positive, and I would start off with subtraction. And so in my mind, it's kind of a little bit easier to add numbers. So I look for all the numbers with the same signs. I see two negative numbers, so I will add them up, just the absolute value. Please do not, I don't mind if you use a calculator to help you check your work on the additions or subtractions, but don't use that negative button on the calculator, because you're losing the concept. And right now it's real important that you're using the concept. If I feel that you're doing that instead of thinking through the project or the problem, then I'll make it so that we can't have any calculators at all. But since I'm using two-digit numbers, I'm going to allow you to do that as a time saver. So you would basically group these together. So you would have -27 plus the -85. And the math you would do would literally be 27 plus 85. So you get 112. That's your negative integer. So it's a -112 plus this 56. And now you have a negative and a positive, so you find the difference, or you take your 112 down here without the sign, the absolute value, and you subtract the 56. So 12 minus 6. And 10 minus 5. So I get the absolute value of 56. The last step is deciding, is it a positive 56 or a negative 56? Because the negative force is greater, right? The negative integer, the absolute value of that one is greater. My answer or final solution is a -56. In the next problem, I have 78 plus 39 plus -62 plus -46 plus 11. So I have some positive forces and some negative forces, and I have to group them all together. So these are the negative forces. I want to add together 62 and 46 to get 108. Okay, so I have an integer that is -108. Then I will add together my positive forces, 78, 39, and 11. To get a positive integer of 128. All right, the absolute value of 128 is greater than 108, so I will literally be subtracting these two integers. So I have 128 minus 108. We could probably do that in our head to get 20. That's crazy too. And since the positive one is a greater absolute value, my answer is positive.